On the path of the evolution of consciousness, there are many times when we reach a juncture where we're invited to create the self anew. We're born into this world, to families, to parents, to communities that provide an identity for us. They tell us who we are. They define what we are. Much of our childhood is an education in becoming somebody. Becoming a child to parents, brothers and sisters, to our siblings, becoming members of larger extended families, becoming a student in school, becoming a member of larger communities. And in each of those contexts, we show up a little differently. We are a slight variation of this baseline self that we're cultivating. And this begins the process of individuation, this becoming somebody, which is a very important part of the spiritual journey, this somebodyness training. But as we progress in age, we start to try to understand, usually in the teenage years and the early 20s, who we are free of how we have been defined up to this point in our life. Up to that point in our life, we've been told who we are, and often a tension has started to build within the self between other people's expectations and our own preferences. So we rebel. We often begin to define ourselves in opposite ways to the way that we have been defined by others up to this point. And that is a process of self-exploration, self-expression, self-discovery, trying to understand the self better. Then as we mature, we often make concessions by the time we hit our mid-20s, early 30s. We make concessions to society, we make concessions to other people. We lose a little bit of that adolescent rebelliousness. And we start to try to find some middle ground between what society or family expects from us and our authentic self. And our understanding of that authentic self is an evolving process that we learn and experience often through the gift of contrast, preferences, aversion, things we're attracted to. And as we mature and become an adult, become even middle-aged, like I am right now, you may find that there is a fork in the road you're presented with. An opportunity to maybe double down on who you've become up to this point in your life, to double down on your choices, your partnerships, business, and romantic. Double down on creating a family, becoming a father or a mother, taking on greater responsibility in your chosen profession. A maturation of the choices made in the young adulthood, coming to fruition of many of those things. And that can be a beautiful thing. But there's another opportunity there to perhaps reinvent the self more radically, which is what I've chosen to do. Maybe that was because I either quickly outgrew the choices of my young adulthood, or maybe I just needed to change directions for my soul's own continued growth and evolution, whatever the case may be. I reached a point as I approached middle age where I didn't like what the next 20 to 30 years looked like if I continued on the same path. Didn't look fun. Didn't look particularly interesting. It felt like I had learned most of the things that the path had to teach me. And so I wasn't particularly excited about continuing walking it for the rest of this incarnation. So instead of doubling down on the choices I made in my young adulthood, I chose reinvention and renewal. I chose to step into the great unknown after making many of the hard choices and taking many of the actions needed to free myself from the life I had created. I now find myself in a really interesting place where I'm not defined by who I was taught to be as a child. I'm not even particularly defined by who I chose to be as a young adult. Rather, I'm in this curious place of becoming something that transcends and includes those previous versions of myself, but which is at the same time radically new and different from everything I've ever been before. New life circumstances coming in, new people coming in that are unlike anything and anyone I've experienced or met before, but which are, in many ways, a higher level of alignment, resonance, and more full of life than anything I've experienced up to this point in my life. Many people say that by middle age, the best years are over, and that at this point, you're just running out the clock, playing out the game that you put into motion as a child and young adult. But that's not my experience at all. My experience has been that this is a time where there's an opportunity for radical transformation and renewal, for embodying the highest and best version of yourself, for becoming the person you're always meant to be and hope to be before you incarnated into this body. It is a beautiful opportunity to recreate the self. More peace, joy, and love than the previous versions. Still young enough to have passion, play, adventure, but also wise enough to not repeat some of the mistakes of the earlier years that caused suffering. But this isn't only limited to those in middle age. I'm meeting many beautiful people in their 20s who seem to have come in with a lot of this wisdom and are making choices for their lives, greater integrity with truth and their own desires than I was capable of doing at that age. And I suspect that by middle age, they'll be able to reinvent themselves even more, come into a greater expression of truth than even they are now. It seems that each generation starts from a higher baseline level of consciousness due to the work the previous generations have done on themselves. If you are in one of these periods of renewal, of transformation, if you are needing to reinvent yourself and liberate yourself from some of the sticky circumstances that you find yourself enmeshed in, I'm here to help you any way I can. One of the things I do, one of the services I offer, is transformational guidance and healing to help people, no matter where they are in life, step into a truer, more expansive version of themselves. The name of my company is Medicine Council, and if you have any interest in that work or working with me, you can click on the link below and schedule a session. Till next time.